Hey, you fucks, this is Everyone's Wrong. I'm Dave, a.k.a. the Great White North.
I'm Dustin. Mixed race is the master race dark.
And I'm Ed, with no safe space.
Ooh. There you go, Ed.
Ooh,
Damn.
He's getting out there. I like that one.
He's putting himself out there. It's
All
good.
Right.
He's in a good mood. He's in a good mood tonight. So how are you, fucks? Good, bad, ugly?
Well, I'm always ugly, Dave. That's not fair to ask. That's yeah. How dare you?
That's one man's opinion. I'd sex you up.
Oh, well, just boosted my confidence after a recent letdown. Thank
Listen,
you.
I'm not going to fix you up. I'm not that desperate yet, buddy. Sorry. I'm not that hard.
Ed,
a couple more weeks.
If I know anything, it's that time is always on my side.
Oh, and Ed, Brooke wanted me to tell you that she is sure you're a nice fella and all, but she's married, and even if she wasn't, she has a backup already.
See? I can't even buy a date. Jesus Christ.
Oh, Lord. That's not fair. I like that.
Kick a guy when he's down. Holy shit.
Oh, with you to the wolves, man. With you to the wolves. Yeah, so, how have you been, Dave?
Well, I'm fucking excellent. It was holiday weekend for us. Spent most of it with the kids. Had Dairy Queen today. You know, interesting fact about fucking Dairy Queen that I did not know is they have like 152 flavors of Blizzard now, and they also ate up Julius Caesar, or not Julius Caesar, Orange Julius.
Yeah.
Orange Julius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, like I kind of felt you told me about that today, and I kind of felt a connection. Because like Dairy Queen and Orange Julius are like it's very ingrained in the South. You know what I mean? Like when I was a kid, a lot of my church would go to Dairy Queen after church. You know, and a lot of towns across the South would do that. So I was like, man, fucking Dave going to a Dairy Queen with his family.
There's actually lots of Dairy Queens in like Canada. Like within a 10-minute drive of my house, there's 3. Just I don't
oh my
usually.
God. I'm not kidding. The closest Dairy Queen that I know about, and I'm sure there's one closer, is an hour away. And don't
really?
Get me wrong, when I go to Birmingham, I will purposely like go by Dairy Queen before I go home. But here's the thing: when I was younger, though, it was much bigger. My school actually, like on Wednesdays, 'cause I'm such a fat kid. On Wednesdays, they would actually get like the Dairy Queen chicken sandwich like brought in. You know, you had to like order the day before. Man, but it was actually like chicken strips on a sandwich, you know, all chicken tendies. I'm such a fatty. God damn it. So, with mayonnaise.
What I remember from when I was a kid, my favorite spot to eat was A&W. Do you guys have A&W?
You know, the only place I've ever seen an A&W is in airports when I've traveled across the United States, flying from one place to another. They're really in the airports.
When I was a kid, because I'm 40 as fuck, you would order the food from the girls. It's not like a sit down restaurant. You'd stay in your car, and the girls would come out on roller skates. Mm-hmm. And they would write your order down. They'd go back in on roller skates, and they come skating out, and they would have this tray that hooked onto your window when you rolled it halfway down. And that's how. And I was a big roller skater when I was a kid, so I fucking loved that place.
Oh man, did your boyfriend teach you?
No, but my abuser did.
Oh shit! Oh man, so you know there's actually like a Tim Hortons in Birmingham. Like we've talked about it. I've yet to go to it. I should go next time. That way I can feel. So let me get this right. Before I go, and maybe I will go. I'm going to Birmingham tomorrow. I hear that you're supposed to lean against the wall and take a shit while you're there, and throw it at employees. Is that right?
Throw it at the employees. Yes.
Yeah, that is a national tradition for Tim Hortons.
Yes, and a moose has to walk in the door eventually in order for it to. Because in the winter time when it gets like nasty cold up north, you'll always see in the newspaper, moose heads into Tim Hortons because they're open all the time, right?
What a country! What a country you have, Dave.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
God damn it!
I
want to do that.
Ed, you're all settled in.
Yes, I have my apartment and I'm settled in, finished unpacking today. It's been a nightmare and a half, but I've got it done.
you christen it with a hooker yet?
No. I have no money to christen it with a hooker.
Otherwise, you would have already.
Of course.
Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Dustin. Sorry, interrupt.
No. If anyone doesn't understand the joke we just made, Google Tim Hortons shit, and you're welcome.
And video, and put video.
You know what? As far as that goes, Google the the Atheism is Unstoppable video about it. He did a great video on it. Because he's made some videos about black people getting arrested in Waffle Houses, which has happened twice in my great state recently. And so he's like, let me show you how white people handle a disagreement in a restaurant. Great fucking video.
Okay. You know what the difference between Tim Hortons and Starbucks is, right?
No.
Okay. When I feel like I'm a Marxist, I go into Tim Hortons because it's the proletariat type restaurant, like the working class goes to Tim Hortons. When I want to see what the country would look like if Germans had one, I go to Starbucks. And Starbucks is like the well-oiled machine that,
Have you ever been to a Starbucks?
Yeah, here they're like, they speak a different language and they're all really efficient.
Here it's all Marxist followers that go there and want to use fancy words to get their coffee.
Marxists. That's not real Marxists.
But no,
anyway.
Ed,
Neo-Marxists.
It's for SJWs. Put it that way. Tim Hortons is for the working man.
I have literally at the Starbucks in Birmingham, just like talking with my ex-girlfriend, got into an argument with some University of Alabama at Birmingham professors about Marxism. Like that happened. So, and of course you know what side I'm on.
You know what the real difference between Tim Hortons and Starbucks is, Ed? I can go to Tim Hortons and I can say, I'll get 3 milk, 1 sugar, and they'll fucking put it in the coffee for me.
Yeah.
I go to fucking Starbucks. Oh, and it costs $2. I'll go to Starbucks. I'll say, I'll get a large coffee. They'll give me a coffee. I'll have to put my own milk and sugar in it and cost $5. That's the difference.
And it tastes like shit. I hate their coffee.
I'll tell you one more, and I hope this isn't like a myth because I just saw it today on Facebook. Maybe it's a hoax to fuck with people. So take this with a grain of salt, people. But I'm pretty sure Starbucks just said that you don't have to buy anything to be in Starbucks. So they also just became de facto homeless shelters for everyone around the world.
And you know that not only did they take the afternoon, or they're taking the afternoon off in the States for the racial sensitivity training, they're doing it here as well.
Carl Benjamin, Sargon of Akkad, actually said, if anyone listening to me is going to one of these, please get audio or video recording of what happened. So I am expecting something delicious to surface. I really am.
Yes.
All right.
For sure. Well, all right. Yeah. So we'll start the show. We'll be right back. In the first segment, I'm going to tell you guys about the Tulip festivals because I'm super gay. And we're back from the break. And in the first segment tonight, I'm going to tell you guys about the Tulip festivals real quick, and then we'll get into why I'm telling you about the Tulip festivals.
And I want to say that Dave's been a real nice guy here. His boyfriend really insisted that he talked about it, and he caved right in. And and I want to say that I'm in full support of. I even have one in my hair. You do. It's really pretty. Yeah, it's.
I have one on my ass too.
I didn't see that one, but I believe
you. Want it? Okay.
If you could mail that to me, I will fucking keep it forever.
You'll sniff it, eh?
Oh, dude, I'll put it in a book till it goes like dry, and then every morning.
God damn.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
in all seriousness. Okay, so this story is going to start at D-Day. For people that don't know history, that's World War II. So when U.S., Canada, and Great Britain stormed the beaches in Normandy. First, we renamed the beaches to whatever the fuck we wanted it to be. So ours was Juneau. I can't remember what England was. One of yours was Oklahoma, and what was the other one? Ohio, yeah. So we just were like, fuck you, France, for renaming your beaches. But I'm sure
Omaha.
So I'm sure we deserve to rename their beaches, considering we liberated them. Anyways, there was one soldier named Léo Major. When they stormed the beaches, he killed a bunch of Germans, but he was hit in the face by a phosphorus grenade, and he lost his eye that day. He was sent to the doctor, to the physician, and the physician said, "The war is over for you, son." And he said, "Oh, no, it's not. I'm a sniper. I only need one eye to shoot." So they sent him back in. And after the three countries conquered the beaches and set up, each country from HQ was given their directives and their missions. And one of Canada's missions was to liberate Holland. For people that don't know, Holland, the tulip in Holland is ingrained in their culture. As Dustin will explain better than I will. At one point, it was their currency. Go ahead.
Yeah, from my understanding, actually, the first true financial bubble to burst was actually the trade of tulips in Holland. I'm a little weird about this story. I have a lot of art around my room. I'm kind of into symbolism, and I like tulips a lot, particularly because it was traded in the way that the United States was trading houses during the housing bubble, and that people would buy tulips for the sole use of reselling it for a profit, and a particular type of tulip that would be striped in colors from a disease that was very rare. So the value of them grew higher and higher to a significant portion of the economy was actually tied up in tulips, something like a third of it, until one day someone bought the most expensive tulip and they couldn't sell it. And the bottom fell out of the market, and, people had taken loans on, this and that and the other so that they could buy tulips and get in the market, and this is actually the first time, that I'm aware of, someone please correct me, but it's the first time that that phenomenon happened, and it has, of course, repeated through history. That's my personal fascination with tulips. And of course, I'm a gardener. I grew up gardening, so.
You guys would know way too much about fucking flowers.
Well, as a Mexican American, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I think I learned that from Dan Carlin, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know if I learned that from Dan Carlin. I learned it from
his girlfriend.
I actually think like some fucking Cracked article that I then researched because I don't trust Cracked for shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, Canada achieved its objective in liberating Holland, and since the tulips are so special to Holland, every year on the date that we liberated them, they send millions and millions and millions of tulips to Ottawa, and then they send the caretakers and the gardeners with them, and they come and they set them up, and we have big festivals, and the people from Holland come and they just remember the fact that Canada lifted the Nazi boot off of them. But the one story that I want to tell in particular is of Léo Major. So we have an article that Ed's going to read, and take it away, Ed.
Okay, so Léo Major, the One-Eyed One-Man Army by David Hunt. Okay, the city of Zol awaits destruction. Just after midnight on April the 14th, 1945, a solitary figure slipped into the outskirts of Zol, a city roughly in the middle of the Netherlands. Private Léo Major, a French-Canadian soldier in the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division, an eye patch over his damaged left eye and wearing sneakers, sprinted quietly and quickly along the dark, empty streets. He carried a submachine gun and a bag full of grenades. 2 more submachine guns were slung over his back. He'd been sent to
See, that's where I fucked up because I don't know that word. It's not reconnaissance.
No. Okay. He had been sent to reconnoiter Zol. which was occupied by the Germans and was possibly linked up with the Dutch resistance, while Allied tanks and heavy artillery gathered to bombard the city and drive the Germans out. But Leo had decided to liberate the city and save it all from destruction, all by himself. Private Major's decision to save Zoll was not an isolated impulse of suicidal bravado. He pretty much had been a thorn in the side of the Germans since landing in Juno Beach on D-Day the year before with the rest of the Canadian Army. On that first day, he captured a German armored half-track by himself. A few days later, he tangled with the SS troops and killed 4, even though during the fight, a phosphorus grenade blinded him in his left eye. He had refused to be evacuated, stating that he only needed his right eye to aim. Besides, with his new eye patch, he fancied he'd rather look like a pirate. In late autumn of 1944, as Canadians advanced towards Antwerp, Belgium, Private Major encountered 2 Germans, killing one and capturing the other. Instead of returning with his prisoner, the lone major forced the soldier to take him to his commanding officer. In the ensuing firefight, he killed 3 more before the garrison, roughly of 100, surrendered. As he escorted them back to the Allied lines, SS troops spotted the prisoners, hands on head, and began firing on their own troops. Major respected regular German army soldiers as fellow combatants, but after seeing the SS kill several of their own men, he would in the future give no quarter when it came to members of the SS. Major kept his prisoners moving, and by the time that they were safely behind Canadian lines, he single-handedly had captured and delivered 93 German soldiers. For this extraordinary feat, Major was told that the British General Montgomery would present him with a Distinguished Conduct Medal, second only to the Victoria Cross for enlisted men. This private major refused because he said Monty was too incompetent to be handing out medals. I like this dude. By the 13th of April, 1945, the 3rd Canadian Division had approached the Dutch city of Zoll from the south and needed to determine the extent and location of the occupying German forces. Private Major and his friend Corporal Arsenault volunteered to scout the enemy positions, contact Dutch resistance, and return before 6 a.m. when the division's artillery would start shelling the city. The two slipped into the city's outskirts after dark, but had already decided to try to save the city from being destroyed. Unfortunately, Arsenault soon ran afoul of an enemy machine gun emplacement and was killed. Enraged, Major picked up his friend's weapon and killed 2 of the crew while the rest ran off. He helped himself to a 3rd submachine gun, plenty of ammunition, and filled a bag with grenades before heading further into the city. As he approached the town center, he spied a soldier in the driver's seat of a German staff car outside a tavern. Major surprised him and forced him inside the pub, where he found a German officer conversing with a barkeep. After disarming his new captive, Major, who spoke no German, discovered that the officer spoke fluent French. He told the German that Zoll was nearly surrounded by an overwhelming force, that he was a member of the Canadian Advance Party that had infiltrated the city with orders to withdraw by 6 a.m., when the city would be subjected to a horrifying bombardment followed by a massed attack. The officer seemed to understand the situation, as well as the fact that the war in Europe was in its last weeks. So Major took a calculated risk and let the man go, hoping they would spread the news of their hopeless position instead of rallying the troops. For the next several hours, Major prowled the city, firing his weapons and throwing grenades. Indeed.
One second, Ed. Sorry, just one fact was left out. He gave the German his gun back at the bar. to make the German believe that he was telling him the truth, he gave him his weapon back. That's just one fact that was left out. Sorry, continue.
No problem. For the next several hours, Major prowled the city, firing his weapons and throwing grenades, indeed sounding like an advance party instead of a lone private. On occasion, he got into an actual firefights with groups of German soldiers and killed and wounded some. He preferred scaring them off when possible, but several times he escorted groups of 8 to 10 captives back to Allied lines before heading back into the center of the city. At some point, he found the Gestapo headquarters and set fire to it. Later still, he came across Zoll's SS headquarters, which he entered. Inside were 8 SS officers who put up a fight. He killed 4, but the other 4 escaped. Major regretted he wasn't able to kill them all. By 4 a.m., he was not able to find any more Germans. The enemy garrison had fled westward. Slowly, timidly, some of the city's inhabitants were coaxed outside, and Major was able to meet with the resistance, who had to overcome their suspicion of this lone, one-eyed apparition, bedecked with 3 submachine guns and a bag full of grenades. The evidence of the now quiet city convinced them that they helped Major retrieve his friend's body and return to his regiment by 5 a.m. The artillery barrage was set off, and instead of bombarding...
Called off.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry, my bad. The artillery barrage was called off, and instead of bombarding and assaulting the city, the Canadians were able to march into Zoll to the cheers of its inhabitants. Private Léo Major had single-handedly liberated the Dutch city. This time, when awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal, he accepted, though he still groused about the Americans, specifically General Patton, for grabbing all the credit and the glory for Allied advances.
I'll just tell the next part of the story. So when he got home, he never told anybody. He never told a soul. He didn't tell his wife. He didn't tell his kids. His family didn't find out that he had done this and captured 93 Germans and fucking killed all these fuckers and liberated a town by himself, because the Dutch authorities came looking for him to tell him that they were putting a statue up for his buddy that was killed during the fight, and that they were naming a street after him. So nobody fucking knew. So we didn't learn about it in our textbooks, but in the city of Zoll, he's taught in their textbooks. At soccer games, they hold up big fucking posters of him and they call him the one-eyed liberator. It's nuts that he wouldn't tell it. It's nuts that they wouldn't tell it. Like, he didn't tell anybody.
No, that doesn't surprise me at all that he wouldn't tell people.
No,
the old trope, and of course there's a lot of truth in tropes, right? That's one of the tropes. The old trope is that, someone that comes back and brags about war is lying. You know,
Yeah.
if you hear a story 3 times, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, if they get drunk one night and they tell you some shit you never heard,
Yeah.
probably happened. You know, that's, so that's, that is, and, you know, and two thoughts about this personally. One, you know, Dave, specifically you, knowing you has reminded me that there is a very healthy way to be patriotic and nationalistic. You know, you believe in your people and you believe in your country, and you take pride in the accomplishments that you have gotten as a group without going too far, you know? Without doing it in a healthy way. And the second part of that is that, you know, largely speaking, history is being taught as group struggles. You know, it's part of the influence that Marxist philosophy has been having on the West. And it is fantastic to be reminded that what truly pushes history are extraordinary individuals. Now, you have to have a solid group and a solid society for that individual to empower themselves in a way that changes the world, right? You had to have, you know, the war. You had to have a stable candidate to send him, you know. But it is extraordinary individuals that make the future or break the future. You know, so that's lost, I think, in a lot of discussion about, you know, history and how we got where we are. And it's nice to, for me personally, to meditate on that for a moment. Ed?
Well, one of the things that I like to just to add to this before we clue it up is the fact that I find what is really irking me right now is that people are dishonoring men like this individual, like Major. I think his name is Corporal Major, whatever. Leo Major. But I'm trying to give his rank. But anyway,
Private.
Jesus.
Private Major. They're like really pissing on his memory because they're trying to rewash and erase history, and that does people like him a discredit. I mean, this guy actually not only gave his eye for his country, he was willing to sacrifice everything to not for himself but for everybody else, like in Holland, in the fight against an oppressive regime that would have,
He didn't think twice about giving his eye.
No.
It's not that he was willing to. He gave it, and he was like, "What that you got?" That's what's.
I read a sign on a city bus when I was a teenager, and I'll never forget this sign that I read. And it was because like I don't know about in the U.S., but like around the time of D-Day, like there's all kinds of history facts put up on signs here, and there's all kinds of documentaries on TV. But I read a sign when I was a teenager that stated this: the average 20-something North American male was a vicious street fighter with overly aggressive driving habits. Thank God for that.
Masculinity is a domineering force, so
yeah.
Do away with that, Chaparro.
Anyways, there's a documentary coming out soon. I'll post it on our Facebook group when it does come out. If anybody's interested in seeing the full story and listening to his sons tell the story. Anyways, I just thought people would like to hear that because it's fucking unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
That is an incredible story. It really is. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll head into break and we'll be right back. All right, we're back from the break, and in this segment, Dustin's going to tell us why the Democrats suck so bad and they're going to lose again.
Well, yeah, okay, so at this point, with the information I have at hand, I think that it's pretty certain that they're not going to have the quote-unquote blue wave that they think they are. That's not so certain, but their long-term plans, which we're going to discuss here in a minute, I think would be poisonous to the nation, and it would be just very difficult for a lot of reasonable people to vote for, and we're going to get into that a little bit. So this article that I'm going to read comes from the Washington Free Beacon. I'm going to read their article because they broke it, and it actually comes from April 19th during our break. So this is by Brent Shear and Joe Schlafstahl. A wealthy Democratic donor club plotting the future of the liberal movement hopes to be fighting for reparations by 2022. According to a document obtained by the Washington Free Beacon from the Democratic Alliance Spring Conference this weekend in Atlanta, the desire was stated in the invitation for a Monday reception during the annual spring gathering, which was attended by top Democratic Party officials such as DNC Chairman Tom Perez, former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, and Reps Raul, Hispanic name from Arizona, sorry guys, and Mark Pocan from Wisconsin. What do you want from me?
Mexican like you should know them.
I said Hispanic, which actually points to a language as well as a genetic history, and I'm not Mexican, you fucking bitch. The reception,
I thought it was Samoan.
I'm something like that. I'm obviously the master race. We discussed this in the opening. The reception, called Way to Win 22 Victory Party, was presented as a look forward at what's possible if Democrats can be effective in coming elections. So this is them plotting if things go exactly how we want, this is a feasible future. That's what they're going for here. So it says, quote, "It's 2022 and we are celebrating policy victories across the nation. Medicare for all, and free college. And next on the agenda is reparations, the group projected. According to an invitation to the event, take a ride in our time machine and hear from the true political geniuses who made this happen, it says. Oh, that's fucking cringe.
Isn't free college reparation enough?
You would hope so. Stop in 2020 and 2019 when local power builders turned Arizona and Florida solidly blue and established Virginia as a progressive governance juggernaut. And hear from Stacey Abrams, whose 2018 victory as the nation's first black female governor, pinkies out, set the course for a new wave of leaders. So the group further predicted the successful implementation of universal health care and free college will lead to more sweeping election victories, including the governorship in Texas and its electoral votes in 2024 in the presidential election. Because we're governing with gusto, we're seeing victories up and down the ballot. So I'm going to stop here with the article. First of all, we're how many trillions of dollars of debt?
And 20 or something like that.
And your platform is just fucking spin. That's one. But the other end that really sticks out to me here is the reparations. We are divided as a country enough. Can you please fucking God stop the race baiting? Can you?
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Go on.
Number one, who's being taxed for this?
That's where I was going. Yes.
Okay. Number two, how many people are we doing this by genetics? So the people who are, or genealogy, those were actually, descendants of slaves, or are we just doing this for every person that happens to be black that came through after slavery was over? And I'm saying that not because I think that it's, it's a bad idea, because it is, but it's because we don't know where this money's going to. You can't just take it and just palm it out and say that solves the problem.
Right. Well,
okay.
The numbers too are very extreme. I've seen projections for what reparations should be up into the trillions of dollars. Right.
Oh wow.
So we're talking about, according to once again who you tax, which I'm gonna muddy those waters a little bit more. Don't let me forget about it. So I'm supposed to work. Let's say me. I'm a Southern gentleman. I have a lot of white ancestors. Some of them fought for the Confederacy. Okay. Were any of them slave owners? Not as far as I know. But fucking maybe someone had a servant. Maybe I'll be caught up in this. I'm supposed to work how much of my year for free for black people now? And we're supposed to call this justice?
But hang on. Wasn't like the slave ownership, it was like 5%?
Yes.
Of modern people, yeah.
Yeah, 5% own slaves. The thing
5% of modern Americans had ancestors that owned slaves, I believe is the statistic.
Okay,
yeah.
So what was the actual statistic for slave ownership?
Again though, if it's only 5% of current Americans that had descendants or ancestors that actually had slaves, should those be the only people that get taxed for this? Because the rest of the 95% of white Americans that never owned a slave, why should they pay taxes for reparations? Doesn't make any sense. Logically, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and obviously it didn't, what I'm going to say is it might sound ridiculous compared to people that were in slavery, but slavery also harmed low-skilled workers in America, white workers in America, because they lost their jobs because obviously it was better for the slave masters to pay nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And what about families that had a mixed child? So do they pay taxes? The white half of them pay taxes, and then the black half get reparations, like neutralize it. You know, because
we pay reparations here, Ed.
No, we don't pay reparations. We pay taxes.
We pay reparations to the native school.
Yeah, that's not reparations. That's a court order thing. That's not like what they're talking about. That's different. These kids were actually. This was a court case that they actually won.
Okay. Well, I actually don't have a problem with that, and I wouldn't have a problem with it if they were talking about Native Americans either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have. I just want a logical. If they're going to pay reparations for descendants of slaves, then they have to do it in a consistent, logical way. They can't just do it because a lot of people have immigrated from Africa since slavery was over.
No, but hang on 1 second though. And I didn't finish why I said I don't have a problem with it is because we house them in places where they can't make money, right? Like there's nothing keeping black people out of the job market or from going to universities or colleges, like other than, I guess, whatever, inner city problems or whatever, but there's no government mandated thing that's keeping them from making their own money.
Yes, and you'll have the Jim Crow laws and things like that mixed into this as well.
Yeah, but at this present time, there is no Jim Crow.
No.
And there's lots and lots and lots of rich black people. Like, is fucking LeBron James going to get reparation?
Yeah, but that's according to, we don't know what the scheme is set up to is it like, do you have to show that you have relatives that were slaves?
Well, you would have to, right? You'd have to. But then who pays the reparations? Is it the wealthy family that profited from the slave trade, or is it the U.S. government, which is the average taxpayer, which sorry, go ahead.
Well, and then it gets more complicated because some states had slaves and some states don't have slaves. So we have to split down into which states should. So it's not even going to be like the federal government giving money. It should be the states giving money. And once again, who within those states has to pay those taxes and who within those states gets those taxes or who within the country gets those taxes. So, and here's the real thing is you're setting up a precedent where people are taxed or punished based on genetic heritage rather than actions that they have taken.
Yes.
Of course.
Okay.
Yes.
That is the real fucking catch in this. And, I believe it was, from what I can see here, about 1.4 to 2% at the peak of the United States, owned slaves.
Okay, so a very small amount.
A very small amount. How do you think we have a rise in the right wing right now? You think we have a rise in nationalism or in white identity politics right now? You start taxing people for being white, and you see how many people run to the fucking identitarian right.
That's the scary part. That's the scary part. Yeah.
It's bullshit. You cannot punish people for things they did not do. I cannot believe I have to say this into a microphone in the future. If there is ever an argument that current year is not an argument, it is this right here.
And also the fact is too, Dustin, this is basically for all those atheists out there that are SJWs, this is putting the sins of the fathers on to their sons.
Oh, I make that argument all the time. I love it, Ed.
That's exactly exactly what they're doing.
It's a religion.
Yeah.
Okay. Like here's the thing. I was just listening to a really good Joe Rogan interview today where the guy makes the case that, climate change extremist people that really believe, like they really bought that by now there would be cities underwater. That it's actually part of a new religion that's forming around science, and that is actually their doomsday prophecy.
Yeah.
I
mean, I do believe in climate change. I do believe in that stuff, but
certainly climate change happens, but how much we're taking part of it, and we're way off topic. But God knows how much we're propelling the change.
Even if we are, it's exacerbating. Taxing up people on it is not going to save anything. Anyway, that's my.
Anyway, so
let's go back
to move on with this. So. I think that type of poison, and by the way, it's interesting the plan in this, by 2020, they need to secure a lot of the country first, and if people know that this is what's coming around the corner, they're not going to vote for this. Who the fuck would vote for this?
Well, there's two things I would throw kind of a wrench in their big aspirations. If Sanders wins the primary, because he's not your run-of-the-mill Democrat, and I don't think he's going to keep their platform. He may keep parts of it.
I think he would love that platform.
The reparations too.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. Look, Sanders is talking about, the government mandatory $15 minimum wage jobs for everyone that wants them.
Yeah, but the thing is they really fucked him in the last turnabout. So he may scrap their shit and go with something else, right? Just to get in, because he may know that reparation shit isn't going to work. Right. So, because that's crazy. Americans aren't going to vote for reparation. I once had a conversation with a black guy about reparations, on a podcast a long time ago. The mere fact that I listened to the guy and had a conversation about it, a listener wrote in and called us racist, a white guy. Okay. Mm-hmm. Americans aren't going to put up with it. They have to understand that. Like, it's like, and I wasn't even saying, what I was saying was, well, maybe you could offer them free college. What I said was, if there was to be reparations, I wouldn't give them money. It'd be like free college, or training in some kind of, job and access to more things like, healthcare and stuff like that aren't available to them in the poorer areas. And a white guy wrote in and called me a racist. I guess he didn't understand that I was a white Canadian.
But I mean, just think about this for a second. But why should 95% of white people who emigrated into the United States since slavery that have just be responsible for the 5% of the people who had slaves?
Excuse me. For the 5% of people whose ancestors held slaves, there's another distance there.
Okay,
hang
on. There is an argument though that it was the law of the land, right? So the U.S. government was responsible for allowing slavery to happen, right?
Sure,
so
some states, yeah.
Some states. So there is an argument to be made from that point of view. And no, I am not saying that I agree with just paying people money. What I'm saying is that it's a discussion to be had. Like, you talk about it and that's it. But if you think you're just going to do it, you're not going to win.
Now, this can make sound really bad, but I have to say it because what right does someone have to claim damages for a descendant that, you know what I mean, on behalf of the descendant?
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. That's another
part of the conversation that needs to be said, right? Like, do you have a right to make a claim on behalf of someone that died 3 centuries ago?
I think if I was them and I had lawyers and I was trying to make the case, what I would make the case for is a prolonged discrimination, like, because of that fact, because that, like, it's obvious that has been racism, segregation, all that stuff. If I was them, I wouldn't be doing reparations based on slavery. I would be doing it based on discrimination, keeping you out of certain colleges or the workforce. And I'm not saying, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
But wasn't affirmative action done to rectify that? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, sure. I don't have the answer either, Ed. I'm just throwing out ideas.
But like in Canada, the last residential school didn't close up shop till 96. In my living memory,
I thought it was 92.
No, 96.
96, okay.
Yeah, Saskatchewan.
But the residential school that was closed in 96 was not the residential school of the 70s.
No, but it's still in living memory, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's still in living memory.
Of course it is.
And so those people have claims that because they were affected by it themselves.
And they were just given an ungodly amount of money to split between them. I think the court ruled like $600 million between 20,000 people or something. Not even 20,000, 2,000 people, $600 million. Like it was a really large amount of money.
Because of the abuse. But Dustin, I mean, do they have anything in that has teeth? Like, is there anything in argument being made as to why they are going to ask for reparations? Or
come on, Edge, you know why?
No, I mean any case. I know they want to cater.
They're not making the case in the brochure, which is what I read there. You know, they're not making their case. They're just declaring what they want. But you know exactly what the case is going to be. Mm-hmm. Systematic oppression. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Actually, I brought in some clips to finish out this. I have 17 minutes of audio. Maybe we'll get through it. Maybe we won't. And I actually think that Michael Eric Dyson is going to make a lot of the arguments here for you that you're going to see for reparations, even though it's not specifically made for reparations. Although we do get into that type of talk. And where these clips come from, let me back way up. There's an excellent debate that just was released. It's 2 hours long. It's from monkdebates.com. You can find it on YouTube. And the proposition was political correctness. On one side you have I don't typically describe people this way, but it's the way I believe he would describe himself. A black Baptist preacher. Author, fairly successful. He goes on Bill Maher and that type of show. And on his
it's not that wild hair black guy that's on Bill Maher.
It's not. And the other one is Michelle Goldberg, parentheses. I'm just kidding. She's also on the side. And, his quote, this is very telling to me. His quote is on a debate for political correctness. You're telling me I'm being sensitive and students looking for safe spaces that they're being hypersensitive. If you're white, this country is one giant safe space. So that is his hot take on political correctness, and hers is the focus must be on protecting the groups of people who were targets precisely because of their identities. To sideline their interests is to accede to a backlash that has just begun. So, he's attacking white people and she's making an identity politics argument instead of addressing political correctness, which is the censoring. Let's be honest. Which is the censoring of speech for the protection of feelings in order to not insult groups. That is what political correctness is. And they struggle to define it in this, and that really fucking bothers me. Stephen Fry, the, comedian, it was actually, on Jordan Peterson's side in this debate. They're on the other side. His quote is, the advances of the Enlightenment are being systematically and deliberately pushed back, which is actually an attack on political correctness, because one of the fundamental principles of the Enlightenment was the freedom of expression, the freedom to confront power wherever it comes from. And Jordan Peterson says without free speech there is no true thought, which is of course once again an attack on political correctness rather than his opponents, because it is the censorious nature of political correctness that makes it dangerous. So I really fucking liked that, and I thought that by the way, the end results here is the pre-debate, 64% of the audience was on the Peterson side and 36% was against, and then 6% of the audience actually moved towards the Peterson Stephen Fry side. So we're going to get into this. It got very personal very fast with this. Mr. Dyson very quickly attacks Jordan Peterson on a personal level. The clips that I have here are the 2 hour debate. We have 17 minutes clips, 18 minutes, and it starts with Stephen Fry, and most of it is between Dyson and Peterson. So let's get into this.
The reason that Trump and Brexit in Britain and all kinds of nativists all over Europe are succeeding is not the triumph of the right, it's the catastrophic failure of the left. It's our fault. We absolutely... My point is not that I've turned to the right or anything like that, or that I'm nice and fluffy and want everybody to be decent. I'm saying fuck political correctness. Resist. Fight. If you have a point of view, fight it in the proper manner, using democracy as it should be, not channels of education, not language. You know, it's so silly. There's a chess rule, you know, in chess.
Stephen Fry actually made a really good point there. We have purposely set up avenues of changing the way society is being ruled and governed. And they are purposely going outside of those legal means by just controlling the culture and controlling the language. So, I didn't catch that the first time I listened to it. He's actually making a very fucking striking point there. It's
subversion, basically. They're subverting the natural course of history.
You like that clip I sent you, didn't you? I'm not going to explain what I'm talking about, but you liked that interview, didn't you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So back into it. We're only 40 seconds in.
The best move to play in chess is not the best chess move. It's the move your opponent least wants you to play. At the moment, you're being recruiting sergeants for the right. But by annoying and upsetting, and instead of either fighting or persuading. But political correctness is a middle course that simply doesn't work.
Well, first of all, you said be empirical. Now, empirical, as far as I know, the word means that which can be verified or falsified through the senses.
Exactly. Dyson.
So if we look at it in an objective way, the reality is that people don't have equal access to the means to articulate the very moment you're talking about.
I'm talking about the empirical results of this political...
What he just said there is factually incorrect. That people do not have equal access to the means to articulate their point of view. That is not correct. We have freedom of speech. He is the one trying to undermine the equality of access to speech through identity politics.
Yeah, of course. And the idea that people don't have avenues to speak is preposterous in the internet age. It is absolutely preposterous, especially when you're covertly going into universities and making recruits. You're not you're not educating people. You're recruiting them and making them basically mindless automatons for your cause.
And I feel like I have a little bit of an inside track on this particular fella because I grew up in Southern Baptist churches. I recognize his cadence. I recognize his approach. It's almost a hypnotic way of talking where people stop listening to what you're saying and they listen to the tone of your voice. If you listen to what he is saying, he is so full of shit. Just focus when you hear his voice, man. It kills me. All right, back into it.
Attitude. I understand that, but my point is simply this. I'm suggesting to you that people use the weapons at hand. Now, it was Abraham Joshua Heschel, the rabbi, who said everybody's not guilty, but everybody's responsible. Right? That's a distinction there. Everybody clearly is not guilty, but what's interesting, look at the flip.
No. Not everybody's responsible for other people. Like, that's so fucking stupid. That's ridiculous.
That's a distinction without a difference. Like, those words mean basically the same thing.
If you're responsible for a crime in a court of law, you'll be found guilty.
Yes, and if you did not do it, you are not guilty of a crime.
Or responsible.
Yes.
How am I, a Newfoundlander, person on the other side of the world, responsible for slavery of any sort?
That's so fair.
We didn't have black people in Newfoundland ever up until recently. How am I responsible for something that happened to individuals hundreds of years before I was born? It's the same thing as blaming the Jews for killing Christ. It just doesn't make any sense.
So, back into it.
If you have benefited from 300 years of holding people in servitude, thinking that you did it all on your own, why can't these people work harder? Let me see, for 300 years, you ain't had no job. So the reality is, for 300 years, you hold people in the bands. You hold them in subordination. You refuse to give them rights. Then all of a sudden, you free them and say you're now individuals. Not having the skills, not having the skills, the resources. I'm talking about America, first of all. I'm talking about American society, first of all. I'm talking about the Northern Hemisphere. I'm talking about every society where enslavement has existed, but I'm speaking specifically of the repudiation of individuals.
Who the fuck? What are you talking about? These people had skills. Some of the most successful people of the time were African American slaves that were freed. They actually did a lot of good work. I mean, there's a lot of great writers. There is a lot of great people that actually owned their own farms. Black slaves that escaped into Canada owned land. They worked the land. They knew the work. The laborers of the day. They could farm. Yeah,
are skilled. Yeah, yeah.
What's his name there?
Dyson.
No, the guy that Sam Harris is friends with, the Muslim in England.
Oh,
what's his name?
Oh.
What do you know? He calls that the racism of low expectations.
Yeah, that's actually a Bush quote. That's a George Bush quote. Yeah, dude.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And another thing too, you see how he blurred America with the entire Northern Hemisphere. And another thing that he's doing here is he is blurring, and Ed, you're very correct that actually these people, when they were released, had a series of skills. Did they have the entire picture? I'm sure they didn't. But he is once again confusing 4 generations ago, 5 generations ago with today. And I'm not saying that everything has been rosy since slavery ended, okay? But for my entire generation and for my parents' entire generation, America has done everything it can to make sure young black men and young black women have access to education. Okay. If you're in a poor neighborhood and you don't like your school, they will ship you to a nice neighborhood to go to their nice schools, particularly if you're a minority. Okay. We've done everything we can. What else is there besides the next part of the Democratic Party just literally throw money at it?
And how is, okay, can I put that in perspective? Say we give everybody $1 million for this, okay? Every African American $1 million. And say, okay, here's your reparations. Done. Okay, how fast do you think that money's going to last? How fast? What are they going to use it for? If they have no skills, as he claims.
As a newfie, are you familiar with the term hood rich?
No.
Okay. Well, everyone's hood rich during tax season. I think you'd see that last for about a decade. Oh God, I'm a terrible person.
Okay.
The people who win the lotto, usually are really poor afterwards. They win the lotto, they have a lot of money, they start spending like crazy, and it's gone. Once that money's gone, what is the course of action then? More money? What do we do then? Like, if you're going to try to fix the mistakes of the past, let's come up with concrete solutions, and throwing money at doesn't work. And I could, honestly don't think it's going to work.
Real quick on that point before we get back into it, and this is a lesser discussed positive of capitalism, in that you have to be somewhat disciplined and competent as a person to make it into a comfortable financial position in a capitalist society, right? Which makes it difficult for people that can't handle having money to get money, A lot of people in the lower classes, and I'm just saying all the terrible things. You can't give them money because they can't handle it. I've seen a lot of people very honest. Like, thank God I don't have money. Do you know how much cocaine I would do? Like, I've known people that would be honest with themselves about stuff like that. And that's a larger portion of the population than I think a lot of people would believe. Anyway, I don't think it would have good effects, actually, in the long run. I think it would have almost negative effects.
I just think that
it's like in Canada on the first of the month, call them cash kings for a day. It's the welfare, right? So the welfare checks come out on the first. The fucking lineups at the beer store are fucking down the street. They drive around in fucking taxis. They go, they spend it all in the fucking day. We call them cash kings for a day.
Of course, these aren't black people, all right? Because you're Canada.
No, these are because of Canada. It's white people.
Right.
It's
so that actually, thank you, makes me feel a little bit better for making these generalizations. Because like where I'm from, like, no, the poor class isn't uniformly black, but a lot of it is,
Yeah. Well, no, because we're 90% white. It's right. White people.
Of course.
It's white.
So back into this article. Or these clips.
Individual rights among people of color in America who were denied the opportunity to be individuals. So I obviously and ideally, and I think Michelle Goldberg does too, agree with the emphasis on individuals. What we're saying to you is that we have not been permitted to be individuals. We have not been permitted to exercise our individual autonomy and authority. And
stick a note in that they're the ones not allowed to be individuals.
Hold on. So the 60s movement with Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, whatever, they weren't allowed to be individuals. That's crazy. It was individuals like Martin Luther King, like a Malcolm X, who actually did things and brought other individuals together to actually make change.
Yeah, to create the groups to cause the change. Yeah. Fair enough, man.
And Thomas Sowell also talks about how when the great thing happened, the worst thing that happened to African Americans was the implementation of the minimum wage because they couldn't compete to get jobs. They actually were quite I can't say well off, but they were doing better than white business owners, especially in construction, because they could underbid them and actually get the contract. But once the minimum wage happened, they weren't able to compete as efficiently. Right. So I wonder. So this is something that I think needs to be taken into account.
Mm. Well, back to Mr. Dyson and his charlatry.
Refusal to do so, to recognize me as an individual, means when you roll up on me and I'm a 12-year-old boy in a park and you shoot first in ways you do to black kids that you don't do to white kids, you are not.
You know what? And let me stop him again. More young white kids were shot with Tory guns than young black kids were shot with Tory guns. It doesn't make the fucking news. Look up the stats yourself. It's true. God fucking damn it. I get tired of that one. I think that made it in the Black Lives Matter notes. If you want to go back to that episode and pull it up.
Treating that person as an individual. If we're living in a society where women are subject to aberrant forms of horrid, patriarchal, sexist, and misogynist behavior, you are not acknowledging the centrality.
Wait 1 second. I'm going to stop it now. Is a Baptist really trying to lecture on misogyny there?
Yeah.
Really? Like really, sir? Okay, go ahead.
Of women, you are treating them according to a group dynamic. And if we get beyond the ability of people on the right to understand the degree to which they have operated from the basis of benefit from group identity without having said, I'll end by saying this. The great American philosopher Beyonce Knowles said that it has been said that racism is so American that if you challenge racism, you look like you're challenging America. We are challenging inequality. We are challenging.
Okay, you can't challenge inequality because even if you give people the same amount of money, one person will more likely than not invest money. The other one will spend it. People are not equal by nature because people are individuals. You cannot challenge inequality because inequality exists in nature. One line will outhunt another line by nature. It's a fact.
One human will outperform another human.
The only thing that you can do is you can give them equal rights.
Right.
That's it.
Which I believe we have done.
Yes.
Right. And you can put pressure in the culture to not deal with people based on that particular group identity. Okay.
Am I the only one that finds it strange that in a debate of political correctness, this American preacher is debating the way that America treats black people and the history of slavery to a Canadian and a Brit? I find that very ironic.
As far as that goes, they're speaking about political correctness strictly in an American sense and on American history, but political correctness is an international phenomenon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Global.
And yes. And what does it have in common everywhere? Censorship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The woman, I don't know if she makes this clip, I can't quite recall, but she actually says that she will stand up against censorship. Well, honey, you're debating for it. Let's please get through the charlatans clip.
Okay.
We're 3 minutes into this clip.
Okay, sorry.
The refusal to see me as an individual. When we overcome that, have at it. We're all on equal plane.
I think it's good. I think it's good.
The pot is getting stirred here.
So I've got a couple of questions.
So let's your side spoke, so I'm going to go to Jordan, then to you,
Let's
Michelle.
assume for a moment that I've benefited from my white privilege. Okay, so let's assume that. That's
a good
fine.
assumption.
That's what you would say. So, so let's say here. Let's get precise about this. Okay.
Was that very individual of you?
Let's get precise about this.
You know what? Let's go here too. You're going to see Dyson. He's going to confuse abandoning all group identity. He's going to confuse it with individualism, right? To believe in individualism, which is the empowerment of the individual, distinctivity of the individual, does not mean that you cannot have any group identities at all. Of course, we all have group identities. But what we are trying to say here is that we should not consider race to be a major identity factor. And you cannot demand that we drop race as an identity factor while you refuse to drop race as an identity factor. Okay? That's not how it works. You can't demand that I drop my gun while you say I will drop my gun as soon as you drop yours. No.
And what he keeps talking about the right. What about the black people that are on the right? What about people that are on the right that share his same skin tone who do not believe what he believes?
They don't matter because he's thinking in groups. He's just thinking in groups. You know, look, we talked about a guy that I work with that, white guys tired of this, fucking black guys tired of that. I've gotten to know this guy. He has a philosophy like this that actually applies to every situation. Okay. I've started a game with him where I'll have an interaction with a customer with a customer's car and I'll be like, guess the race, gender, and age of this person. And he works off of his stereotypes that he's built in his mind. And that's exactly what this guy is doing. Let's not fool ourselves. It's exactly what he's doing. That's all he's doing. Yeah. So let's get back in. Peterson, and this is going to tie into the last segment. Peterson is going to step into, he is actually predicting, and this is, I hate to fellatio the man, but he's actually predicting the next step in the ideology where it's leading. He's calling it without calling it.
Okay.
That's good precise.
To what degree is my present level of attainment or achievement a consequence of my white privilege? And I don't mean sort of. I mean, do you mean 5%? Do you mean 15%? Do you mean 25%? Do you mean 75%? And what do you propose I do about it? How about a tax? How about a tax that's like specialized for me so that I can account for my damn privilege, so that I can stop hearing about it? Now,
that preacher just said, you're talking great shit right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And actually, we all know that he's talking horrific shit right now. Mm-hmm. A race-based tax. Can you say financial apartheid?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think these solutions, quote unquote, solutions that they're coming up with seem to me to be more in line with the slave owners in the past than they are with liberating a people in the present. They're more in common.
It's indie.
Yeah.
Is all I see, man. Anyway, back into this.
Let's get precise about one other thing, okay? We'll get precise about one other thing. Now,
precise?
Yeah, precise, yes. And so, if we can agree, and we haven't, that the left can go too far, which it clearly can, then how would my worthy opponents precisely define when the left that they stand for has gone too far? You didn't like equity, equality of outcome. I think that's a great marker. But if you have a better suggestion and won't sidestep the question, so let's figure out how I can dispense with my white privilege, and so that you can tell me when the left has gone too far, since they clearly can. And that's what this debate is about political correctness. It's about the left going too far. And I think it's gone too far in many ways. And I'd like to figure out exactly how and when, so the reasonable left could make its ascendance again and we could quit all this nonsense.
Oh, God, please. What an applause line.
What an applause line.
Mike, I want to come to you on those, Greg Michelle, on Jordan's point about how does he, in a sense, get an equal voice in this debate back if it is implied that his participation brings with it this baggage of white privilege that doesn't allow him to see clearly the issues that are before us.
But that is to be complicit in the very problem itself terminologically. You're beginning at a point that's already productive and controversial. You're saying, how can he get his equality back? Who are you talking about? Jordan Peterson? Trending number 1 on Twitter? Jordan Peterson? With an international bestseller? I want him to tweet something out about me in my book. Jordan Peterson, right? This is what I'm saying to you.
What he's saying here is that I would like you to conflate a man's success and popularity with how he is being treated based on his race or other things that don't matter. Okay, exactly. And keep that in mind. Go on. Can
we talk Oprah Winfrey for a second?
or Kanye? I believe we made some jokes about him last episode. Or a number of very successful black people. How about Obama? Fuck off with this.
Why the rage, bruh? You're doing well, but you're a mean, mad white man. And you're going to get us right. And
you catch that?
I have never seen so much wine and snowflaking. There's enough wine in here to start a vineyard. And what I'm saying to you empirically and precisely, when you ask the question about white privilege, the fact that you ask it in the way you did, dismissive, pseudoscientific, non-empirical, and without justification, the truth is...
Did you hear all those qualifiers? Non-empirical, non-scientific. You were asked to be specific and stop bullshitting and speaking in vagaries. And you're saying that that's once again, he's just projecting. He's using these big words, but
it's a postmodern word salad.
Yes, it's not quite that. Word salad is gibberish. He almost always says the opposite of reality. It's very manipulative.
That white privilege doesn't act according to quantifiable segments. It's about the degree to which we are willing as a society to grapple with the ideals of freedom, justice, and equality upon which it's based. Number 2, what's interesting to me, you're talking about not having a collective identity. What do you call a nation? Are you Canadian?
And there he goes, confusing individuality with group identity. Mm-hmm. You can have group identity and still believe in the empowerment of the individual and the sanctity of the individual and treating everyone as individuals rather than their groups. So
yeah, but they're the ones
that are enforcing it.
But they're the ones that are creating subdividing people into groups. You belong to LGBT community. You belong to the black community. You belong to the Hispanic community. You belong to XYZ community. Like, what the hell is he talking about?
Right. And if anyone didn't miss it, mean, angry white man.
White man, yeah.
He just attacked him based off of his race and gender and age. Peterson doesn't let it go though. Ed?
Where does he get the anger? He's asking simple questions.
Well, here's okay. Let's say I'm responsible for something. I did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been hounding me about it. And my response is, you know what? Fine. Tell me what I owe you and I'll pay you. I'm done talking about it. That's not anger. Is there frustration? Yes. Anger is fuck you. You're not getting shit. That's anger. Yeah. Okay. This is compromise. Well, what do you want from me then? And then refuses to answer what you want from me. So what you want is to fucking pester. What you want is to divide. We offered you a solution and you won't give a solution. You won't even address it. Like, how is offering, like, you said a moment ago that was a great solution and now you're acting like it was dismissive. Because you sat and thought about it.
But he also talks about how money will solve the problem. Money won't solve the problem.
Money won't solve shit, man. Let's how far are we into this?
Let's try to get through this. Try to get through.
We're 50 minutes in. We're probably about to stop the clip. I think I've gotten into most of what I want here.
Being by yourself? Are you an individual or are you part of a group? When America formed its union, it did so in opposition to another group. So the reality is that those who are part of group identities in politics deny the legitimacy and validity of those groups and the fact that they have been created thusly, and then have resentment against others.
I know that there's some more salad there, and I'm gonna end these clips here. And please, guys, go watch the debate. It's fantastic. Everyone does a great job.
I was looking for a little pushback from Peterson.
Okay.
Asking for is the opportunity. The quotation you talk about, the difference between equality of outcome and equality of opportunity, that's a statement.
Well, of course, my point of these clips is actually the direction that the Democratic Party is going and how it's going to poison the party. Yes. So that's why I brought in this particular clip. It's mostly the logical conclusion to the ideology is actually what the Democratic Party is moving towards, right? So if they continue down this path, which is, the same one that this guy's preaching is the same one that we all run into 1,000 times a day online. If this takes over the Democratic Party, it will poison it, and there will be no one to turn to in a two-party system except the right wing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah, of course.
That is my point. If this continues, they will be incapable of winning an election. No one will vote for them but California and New York and a few other major cities.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I don't even know a lot of black people that think this would be appropriate. I really don't. It's a minority within a minority within a minority that's pushing this and running the agenda. And that's not how you run a democracy.
Well, the problem is that it seems to me that minority's in charge.
They are in
the
charge.
Democratic Party.
And this is an argument that I have over and over and over and over and over and over and over online. It's never what the majority wants and does. It is how many within the group are radicals and how much control do those radicals have over the agenda of the group overall. Most Germans weren't Nazis, but the Nazis ran the agenda. Most Russians weren't Soviets, but those Soviets ran the agenda, and on forth and on,
like Bridget said, I forget her last name. She said the silent majority is irrelevant.
Yes, and and that's actually what's her last name? Bridget what?
I don't remember.
Bridget Gabriel.
Gabriel.
It is, yes, it is actually her. Her quote there is actually what. That is actually where I base this off of, because I think she made an incredibly solid argument in that. Maybe we should write this episode out on that clip, because I think it's fucking fantastic. How about that?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna search for it. So here's the thing. I don't think a lot of people on the left listen to this. I think we have some centrists and a few right wing people. But if there's Jeannie, if you happen to listen to this one, you have to get control of your party again. Like you reasonable centrist on the left. Because they will destroy it. This is a democracy. You cannot let the minority run the agenda. Because you win by majority. And that is the one thing that'll save us. But it's going to cause the country to sway to the right as the left searches for a new center.
Justin, in all honesty, do you think that this type of policy making is going to lead to not only a further fracturing of your country, but almost a civil war?
Yeah, actually I do. If this continues and we have one party that is pushing to the white identity or the right identity, and the other party is pushing towards identity politics on the left or minority identity, I do think it could lead to actual civilian war in the old school sense. Yeah, I do. Like domestic terrorism on a rise. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
scary.
Well, it's actually what we've been talking about on this show from the very beginning. It's the years of lead, I believe it was called, in Spain, where the antifascista and the right wing actually, there were mass murders and buildings blown up and all that type of thing. So that's what I'm concerned about, and what I have been, and what is the motivation for this show. So this episode a lot is probably getting back to basics. in theory of the show, as that the increasing radicalization on the left is feeding their radicalization on the right. Because at least in my experience, the right leans towards the center in my country right now, or at least they have historically. You know, like they don't let their extremists have a voice within their party until recently, and that's because the extremists within the left have been having a party, or have been having a strong voice in the party. And once again, in my perspective. So, let's ride out, and this is going to be the very end of the show. Dave, I don't guess you have any reason to end it here, on this Gabriel speech. It's 4 minutes. And it's just, once again, it's not about the majority. It's about the minority actors within the majority and how they drive the agenda. Dave?
I don't have anything to say.
So why should we worry about the radicals, 15 to 25%? Because it is the radicals that kill. Because it is the radicals that behead and massacre. When you look throughout history, when you look at all the lessons of history, most Germans were peaceful. Yet the Nazis drove the agenda. And as a result, 60 million people died. Almost 14 million in concentration camps. 6 million were Jews. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Russia, most Russians were peaceful as well. Yet the Russians were able to kill 20 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at China, for example, most Chinese were peaceful as well. Yet the Chinese were able to kill 70 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Japan prior to World War II, most Japanese were peaceful as well. Yet Japan was able to butcher its way across Southeast Asia, killing 12 million people, mostly killed with bayonets and shovels. The peaceful majority were irrelevant.
I think that's good enough. I'm gonna add in there. It is, once again, the radicals within the left and the right that we have to be concerned with, not the majority. If they drive the agenda, everything goes to hell. You've been listening to the Everyone's Wrong podcast. You can find us on our homepage at Spreaker.com/Everyone's Wrong. You can also find us on iTunes and YouTube by searching for Everyone's Wrong podcast. Or you can listen to us on your podcast app of choice by importing our RSS feed. You can follow us on Facebook.com/Everyone's Wrong, or join our closed Facebook group by searching Facebook for Everyone's Wrong After Hours. You can tweet us at wrong_pod or email us at everyone'swrongpodcast@gmail.com.